Cutting Edge Consciousness with Freeman Michaels and Barnet Bain. Thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here. No Barnet Bain today. We want to quickly thank our sponsors, the folks at Hierophant Publishing, Hampton Roads Publishing, and Inside Events USA's producers of books and products for the mind, body, and spirit. Sitting in today, a good friend of mine, Mitch Newman, is going to be filling the shoes of Barnet today. Of course, for those of you who don't know, Barnet is in Toronto filming a movie starring Donald Sutherland based on a book by Eckhart Tolle called Milton's Secrets. So, welcome, Mitch.
Great to be here. Thanks, Freeman, for having me. I'm actually wearing Barnet slippers. I found them underneath the desk.
That's right. Those cozy,
I'll have to talk to Barnet about
slippers. Yeah, what's that about? For those of you who don't know Mitch Newman is known as the relationship coach. He's a good friend of mine, and he is here today to talk about relationships, talk about consciousness and all that good stuff.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
So let's dive in. We were having an interesting conversation on the ride up here about the space that we have in our relationship for wandering and discovering, and then where the space constricts, where we feel like we have agreements and we're bound to kind of a restricted palette of colors, right? The way it's supposed to look, kind of a programmed orientation towards, what should we be as a couple? What should it look like? What's appropriate? What fits? And my sense is there's some balancing, some amount of the stuff that we learned about what we ought to be doing as a couple and what a marriage should look like is going to come along. And then simultaneously, the ability to create the space for something new. And
to literally blow it up.
Yeah.
Right? To see what works.
Without blowing up.
That's right.
Right? Without blowing it up.
That's right. But to see basically, what works for you.
Yeah.
Right? What works for your wife. And then even potentially creating like a third level where you're able to decide, and agree upon what works together, and then create something new, not to be restricted or constricted by the past about all those shoulds. And
willing to risk what you've been, right, as a couple and as a person, in favor of something that might emerge, the sort of uncharted territory of the kind of let's try something new and or, different.
Or what's greater, right?
Yeah.
What's greater?
Yeah, I love it. We're going to invite another friend into the conversation. So a friend of ours is on the line, Veronica Krestow, who is the author of The Diamond Process, Using Everyday Triggers to Awaken the Treasure Within. Her platform on YouTube is quite popular, and we are grateful, Veronica, that you're with us today here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Thank you, Freeman. It's so good to be here with you and Mitch. I'm honored.
So this balance between having some sort of standards, having some conscious agreements about the relationship and what you want to co-create, and simultaneously, consciously breaking that up is a delicate balance, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Tell us your perspective, because I know a big part of what you talk about on your show and in your work and in your book is about doing it different.
Yeah, I feel like relationship is a doctorate program in consciousness. If one can survive relationship, and not just survive, but actually thrive, evolve, and grow, actually be free within the, I don't want to say confines, but within the boundaries of relationship, unlimited possibility can emerge from there. And I love what you're saying about having no shoulds, like really releasing the shoulds, and how do we do that in relationship? And for me, in my partnership, we have a very unconventional relationship. We're deeply in love. We have, just a beautiful partnership that's constantly growing. And the challenges just keep allowing us to push our edges and grow and become more free and look at where we're holding on, where are we trying to, stay in that limited idea of what relationship is. So there's so many directions to go here, but ultimately, I feel like relationship is definitely a gift in consciousness, which many people don't look at it that way, but it's like a doctorate.
I have a story that I'll share with both of you. Now, we all share a commonality in that we all went through University of Santa Monica's master's degree program in spiritual psychology. And my wife and I were in first year together, sitting on opposite sides of the room, having our experience. And I think it was the third week, and it was pretty profound, the process we had just done. And they were taking some sharing before we went to lunch. And I remember Ron and Marion saying everyone has to share, and some hands went up, and they picked some woman who got up and shared about her experience. And I was really open-hearted and hearing her experience and hearing how it felt to be her and empathizing, and it felt great, and I was like crying along with her, and it was brilliant. And she sat down. And they said, well, does anyone else want to share? And someone else raised their hand. It was another woman who stood up. And it actually is almost 50-50 at this point, men and women. But in this particular moment, two women had shared back to back. And so they called on her, and she got up and she did it. And I had the same experience. They said, well, we can take one more before we go to lunch. And my wife's hand went up. Across the room, I could see her hand go up. And they chose her. And immediately I felt myself get really constrictive. Like all that open-heartedness was out the window, and I started to worry what she was going to say and what it was going to be about me. And I caught myself, right? And I was like, wow, okay, so here are not strangers, because it was probably the third weekend, so I knew these other people, sort of, but essentially strangers. And I was able to be open-hearted with them and hear their experience without a filter, without making it about me. But the minute my wife got up, I started to get really self-conscious. And so I consciously worked to hear her and to hear what she was saying. So what she shared was beautiful and profound to me. And I immediately went up to her after she shared and said, I just want us to go to lunch, just you and I. Because often, as you guys both know, we would go with other people, and, lunch was sort of this big thing of people having community and whatever. So we did. And on the way to lunch, I said to her, I see you. Not who I need you to be, so I'm okay with myself, right? Not who you are as an extension of me, but who you are. And my commitment to you is to see you and honor your experience and be open to your experience, essentially without making it about me. And it was a major turning point for our relationship, because I didn't realize previously how much the codependency, the enmeshment, and so forth was, dragging us into not what we wanted to create. So I just wanted to throw that out because I think it's such a testament to the degree of deliberateness required to stay open to possibility and to have space in one's relationship for the growth. Because it doesn't just happen because you say, oh yeah, relationships are where you grow. Yeah, that's true, and you will kind of grow no matter what, but I think there's an added layer. Thoughts on that, Mitch or Veronica?
Well, I think, it's funny because there are times, especially in that environment, which is a loving, supportive energy for you to be able to share with your wife, I see you, juxtaposed to being in the house with screaming kids.
Yes.
And the last thing I want to do is to see my wife in that moment, and everything in between. I think there's a beauty to all of it. I often refer to it as being consciously unconscious, even in those moments where things are coming out of my mouth and I have zero clue who's actually saying it while I'm saying it. And really everything in between. I think there's just an inherent beauty in the dance that we get to participate, or we get to choose to participate in, whether it's in that kind of a intense, loving environment or in more what happens everyday challenges that go on with kids and career and personal stuff and stuff coming up all the time.
This is good, because what I hear you saying, or the way I'd say it, because maybe it's not what you're saying, but the context of growth the context of acceptance. I know, Veronica, you call it radical self-acceptance. So I love that word, radical. Let's get really radical in our self-acceptance and acceptance of each other. Like even the unconsciousness can come along too, because it's held in this bigger context, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, the first moment I had, my beloved's name is Jason, and that first moment with him where we opened that door of intimacy, I'll never forget the first words out of my mouth were, "I'm not perfect." And like, to me, this was revelational, because in the past I had put on this polished, perfect image in my relationships. Even a 5-year previous relationship, I was able to maintain kind of this false me. And I think that's what a lot of marriages are based on, is like people show a certain side and then they get married and suddenly it's like, whoa, who is this person? You know, you start to see the other facets and layers. So it felt really important for me to just reveal that. And I'll never forget, he looked at me and he was like, "What do you mean? You know, you're not perfect?" Shocking, you know. But so since then, our whole relationship has been based on just revealing all of the stuff. Like that first week together, we just laid it all out on the table, like the really ugly stuff. Laid it out on the table like best friends and just really spoke through it. And it set the tone for a very intentional relationship where we knew we were embarking on something different, something where we could totally embrace each other and support each other's awakening, really, support freedom. So I love that. Yeah, radical self-acceptance. And Mitch, what you said about consciously unconscious, that's awesome. We have many of those wonderful moments.
And I love the idea of perfect, complete with all the imperfections, that we're really not even striving for perfect, that actually is the great distraction.
Yeah, there is no perfect.
No.
Yeah.
Which is what makes it so perfect.
Yeah. Well, and, you know, look, the bumpy edges, to learn to love that too, and to make that part of the sacred bond, for me is really special. The moments when either I or my wife, his name is Jasmine, cop to, you know, our patterning and, you know, own it, is always a tremendous relief. You know, we have this standard of take responsibility for everything. And I know both of you know this, but I'll say it for the audience, is that my experience of the evolution from true codependency, where we're enmeshed and there's no me and there's no you, and it's all this enmeshment and agreement, unconscious agreement, to a sense that, okay, I'm not you, there's an other. And, you know, it's sort of like Don Miguel's second agreement, where you take nothing personally. Well, the third stage of that is you flip to taking everything personally, and you realize that I'm creating all this, and how far can I go with that? Ownership is, for me, the greatest liberation. I'll tell another quick story, just because the stories, I think, are helpful. We were at Disneyland the other day, and I'm not proud of this moment, but I think it's a good moment to discuss. I was really trying to be strategic in how we, you know, planned out the day. So we went super early, and we got on some, you know, got some fast passes, and we got a fast pass for the big Phantasmic thing at the end of the day. Veronica, you probably haven't been to Disneyland in a long time. Mitch and I both have small kids, not that small, I guess. In fact, our daughters are best friends. So we get to do this every once in a while. So anyhow, the guy said, you know, be sure you're there by 8, because it does get crowded and whatever. So the intention was to get there by 8. We got there at 8:02, and already there was this massive group of people sort of ahead of us, right? So getting sort of good seats, as it were, was going to be a bit of a challenge. But we ended up getting to where the seats were, and this woman, like 2 people in front of us, started putting out sweatshirts and like saving all this space. And I immediately got triggered and was like, hey, wait a minute, you know, that isn't fair. Da, 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 da. And Jasmine's like, Freeman, let's go over here. And I'm like, no, this is better. These seats are better. This isn't fair. And she's like, Freeman, over here. And I'm like, whatever. And I'm frustrated, and I go over, and she's like, Freeman, why are you creating that? I said, I'm not creating that. That woman did that. Look, she did do that. She said, Freeman, is your intention right now to have fun and for us to bond and enjoy the day? Or is it to be right and find someone who's doing something inappropriate, so then you get to be right and, you know, create tension? And I was like, ouch, you know? So again, you know, look, in moments in my life, it feels appropriate to kind of stand up and say, wait a minute, this isn't okay with me, boundaries, whatever. But that becomes a racket. And I can find myself in conflict all over the place. Like if you want to find injustice in the world, not hard to do, right? Is that what I'm bent on? Or am I really bent on having a great day? And someone else can go match energy with that lady and battle over the space and tell her how unfair she's being and so forth and so on. That wasn't my role in that day. And so here's what I'm trying to get to. We'll take a commercial break after I finish the story. We'll come back, talk more about it. Can my relationship hold enough of my shadow in a exposed way? And, I'm telling the story more delicately because initially when Jasmine was care-fronting me, I know we always use this language, the three of us, I wasn't feeling cared for. I was feeling defensive and so forth, but I got it, right? And there's space in our relationship for that kind of care-fronting, which is everything, because what if we just don't make it wrong? And what if we make it part? And what if we forgive fast? So I want to address all of that on the other side of this commercial break. So stay with us because we'll be right back here on Cutting Edge Consciousness.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, sponsored by Hampton Roads Publishing, Hierophant Publishing, and Insight Events USA, producers of products and events for the body, mind, and spirit. We are here with my dear friend, Mitch Newman, my wonderful friend, Veronica Krestow, and we're talking relationships. And I love the subtitle of your book, Veronica, Using Everyday Triggers to Awaken the Treasure Within. And I felt like the story I told has some threads of that, but I'd love for you to comment on it.
Oh, my God. First, I just love this whole conversation right now. When you asked the question, you said something like, can my relationship hold enough of my shadow, or can it show or reveal enough of my shadow? Even now, I still felt my stomach kind of like, blah, kind of churn of the courage it takes consistently in relationship to allow all of that. And I could feel in your story, just that part of you being shown, and then the kind of reaction to your beloved, to Jasmine, to just respond with like, are you kidding me? You're not on my side. It's totally that woman's fault. Hello. But when you got to the whole idea of intention, just being intentional, and Jasmine kind of bringing you back and saying, following your joy. Are you having fun today, or do you want to be right? It just took me to this quote that's the foundation of my life and the book and my relationship and my work, everything, everything. And it's a Rumi quote. You guys are both familiar with, I'm sure. And it's out beyond ideas of right doing and wrong doing. There is a field. I'll meet you there. And to me, that field is the context of relationships. So, having those moments where a part of the self that's been buried since childhood, it's buried deep. Like, for me, it's the insecure parts of me. I'm terrified to be seen as insecure or, wounded in any way. And the truth is, of course, I have insecurities and wounds. So letting those come up in relationship, it literally feels like being stark naked on a stage in front of thousands of people, or it can feel that vulnerable.
Totally.
And the beauty in relationship, it's like what you just asked, Freeman, that question so powerful. Can my relationship hold my shadow? Can it see it? Can it embrace it? And so the question, the reason the subtitle of the book is called Using Everyday Triggers to Awaken the Treasure Within, is because really what awakens consciousness, what awakens us, and what has helped me to continue to keep growing in this awakening of who I really am, is being bold enough to show those parts of myself, to be whole, to be a mess, to be on top of my game, to be gorgeous, to be ugly, to be every single facet. If I have one side, then I also have the other. And I find it such a gift, what you're sharing here, and in a relationship to have a partner to be able to reflect that stuff.
Yeah, that Rumi quote's a great quote.
Yeah.
And sometimes I find with my wife and I, it's like there is a field, I'll meet you there, just not right now.
Maybe tomorrow.
See, that experience in Disneyland, this is how it would have looked with my wife and I. It would have been me freaking out, and my wife turning to me and saying, appealing to my adult self, because clearly I'm like 9 to 11, right? In this not fair thing, right?
That is right there.
She will say to me, she'll say, how old are you right now?
Yeah.
You know, like that's how we play with this. We use a lot of humor with it. And it really goes, I'm maybe 11, you know. And so, and it's really interesting to get caught like that. I love getting caught like that.
Well, that's an interesting thing that you said. I love getting caught like that because I do love getting caught like that. And I don't love it. In the moment I get caught, and my wife, we have little catchphrases too. I think you know the one. My dad's name is John Thomas, and he does a little racket. And whenever I'm doing it, my wife says John T. And I'm like, oh, because I'm doing the thing that I learned growing up about how to respond to challenges that isn't the way I choose to respond, right? That's not the aspiration. It's just the default setting. It's what I learned, right? And the idea that can come along too. And I want to layer in the forgiveness piece, that it's such a corny, almost advice thing, but forgive fast. Like to the degree that, because even when I was triggered, my wife was also triggered, right? She couldn't believe that I was going there. Really, you're going to do this now, Freeman? Is that really how you want to play this? That wasn't clean of trigger. She was, truly charged. But we forgave fast. And we moved back into what do we want to create? Because the path of being right about what the other person is or isn't doing and making our case is insidious. We can fall on it so easily and go writing it and going, wow, is this how I want to hold this? You guys know what I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like, I'll always ask myself, what's underneath that? Because if I want to be right, there's just some little, I love that question, Mitch, how old are you being right now? Because typically there's this little girl in me that's like underneath this big, strong voice trying to be right. And it's this little girl inside that's like, please love me. Can you, please accept me. Please see me as who I am.
Well, and there's this insecure part, which you brought up before, that doesn't believe I'm lovable, right?
Yeah. Not enough, not lovable. Yep.
It's interesting because I've said this, and Mitch, you've heard this before, that my confidence at this point includes my insecurity, meaning that I'm confident in the self that sometimes gets insecure, as opposed to creating this split where either I'm confident or insecure. Both can't occupy the same space. Yes, they can. They have to. It's okay for me to choose to do things in life that are a little crazy, a little scary, and part of me, I use the word part of me, is a little frightened and overwhelmed and doesn't think I can do it, and enough of me has the wherewithal to go for it. And they both exist simultaneously. I didn't get that for a long time. I held them, and even with the awakening or the healing, it was either healed or not healed, awakened or unawakened. It's both. It's a muddy business here.
It's tricky.
It is tricky. You love that, don't you, Mitch?
I love that. No, I find it a lot for myself. There are times, and another thing that my wife and I do is when we sense the other person is triggered in that kind of a situation, there'll be this line, are you open to feedback? And it's usually yes. No. It's usually yes, but not right now.
That's right. Get back to me later on that.
But I promise we'll come back to this, because this is one of those moments I say that this sucks so good, right?
Right.
I know there's richness here, but I just don't want to be in it right now because I want to be in it, and I want to be outside of my body, and I want to just
I'm
rant. Judging
myself pretty hard right now.
Yeah.
I'm in my shame. I'm in my reaction. Yeah. I'm not liking being called out. It doesn't feel good, Yeah. I love sucks so good because, look, here is what my truth is. On the other side of getting through something like this one wasn't massive. We've had ones that are much bigger. There's an intimacy and a connection because the being loved and seen for who I am, including the part of me that is, constantly finding something to rail against in the world so I get to be right, that there's injustice, not helpful. That part comes along too, and that I can be loved, including that, is powerful intimacy.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's it right there. That is it right there. It's like to me, to be able to be in a relationship and that stuff, be in the mix, and then not even to even imagine. I'm done. I've actually given up on imagining a day where where the triggers aren't there, because it's life. Life is
totally
triggers. And now, if there is a goal, the goal is just can I be courageous enough to be seen, to love my partner as he is, to be loved as I am, and just love this messy, yummy playground called life, and just roll around, like romp around in the mess.
Yeah, can I choose to love it? I mean, that's just that's the consciousness. Can I choose to love this too? Or maybe even before I get to love it, can I just not make it wrong? Can I accept it? Can I accept that, part of me is, doesn't feel seen and heard and cared about and feels injustice and so forth, and I can see that reflected back in any moment in time. The part of me that wanted to go a certain way, and when it didn't, I wanted to have a tantrum, and find someone to point to and say it's your fault, versus reorganize, take ownership, not control, ownership of my experience and redirect. How can I move towards something that's going to get me what I want versus getting caught in the railing against what I don't want?
Well, and consciousness is, when we choose consciousness, I always say it's like once you choose consciousness, there's no turning back, right? There's no going back to sleep. So once I make the choice of consciousness, it's really about accepting in that moment that there's always going to be a deeper cut. Right. That wherever I've arrived, that there's going to be another arrival point at some point.
Well, and it's moment-to-moment choice, right? I choose consciousness moment-to-moment. Do I go unconscious? All the time. But the orientation is back towards what is it I want to create. And my choice is to be more open, more self-aware, more loving, and more kind, and so forth and so on.
And what we have, I think, in this day and age that I can at least speak for myself, my parents' generation didn't have access to or an awareness of, is that we can go unconscious, but we have developed the skills and the tools to go back and clean it up.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's the beauty of it, to be able to go back and say, I need to take ownership about something that happened earlier.
I'll say one thing about this, and maybe, Veronica, you want to weigh in on this. The one thing I'm a little wary of is, and I just had this conversation the other day, where a friend of mine was tracking something that triggered him, and he said, when I was a kid and this happened, that happened. I'm like, yeah, can we hold it in a bigger context, in a more expansive context? Because the challenge with tracking back all the time, I don't know. I don't even know if I'm articulating this very well, but I don't want to live my life constantly finding reasons for things that are occurring. I'd rather snap out of them and move into what I want, right? I think it's a common thing when we meet someone and we're up to revealing our shadow, as it were, where then that can become the bond. Like wound mates is a term where people bond over their woundedness and or their ability to use skills, and that becomes its own shtick. Do you know what I'm talking about, Veronica?
Absolutely, yeah. Can a relationship be, dharmic? Can it be about living your purpose together? Can it be fun? Can it be adventurous? Does it always have to be processing?
Yeah, because that's annoying. You get around the couple who's always processing, you're like, whoa, this isn't fun.
Yeah, it's, that there was a turning point in my relationship maybe even as recent as a year and a half ago, where we realized we were kind of in that, and this is really transparent, and God, I don't know if I want to say this, but I'll just say it out loud. He called me on my, about a year and a half ago, we were in this dynamic for, 3 years in our relationship, 3.5 years, where I was, I guess, playing sort of the victim, and I didn't realize it. And Jason, who's this powerful, amazing presence, was constantly helping me, supporting me, guiding me on my process. And about a year and a half ago, he finally said, I don't want to be this guy who's constantly rescuing the damsel in distress. And in that moment, it was just like, whew, like wake-up call. Like, I am not the damsel in distress. I didn't even see myself as that. And in that moment, I was so grateful for his courage to say that. We sat and we completely transformed our contract. We totally shifted our agreement in relationship, and we stepped into this, where I really stepped into a woman. And that was such a big turning point for me, and there's so much that led up to it. And our relationship since has been so much more about adventure and joy, and of course triggers still come up, but now I take more responsibility, or full responsibility, for myself, and it feels so good not to lean on him. That now I have my team, I have my people I go to, and I can just be married and in partnership with him rather than leaning on him as my counselor.
Well, and you may slip in, and you may slip in from time to time to your damsel in distress racket. I mean, that's just something we learn. I don't love when my wife plays mommy and I play little boy, but I recognize we do it sometimes. So I don't want to necessarily make that wrong, but I don't want to spend a lot of time there because it doesn't really work.
Right.
It has its moments when it can be fun, though.
Could you call Jason and tell him that?
Yeah, right.
Well, it's such an interesting thing when we catch ourselves where we become addicted to our own stories. Like we finally found the hook that we're convinced that's why we are the way we are, and that's why we walk into this, and so we end up leading with our best stories.
That's great.
And we can always just fall back on it instead of just going, you know what, I need to lighten this. I think it's great the way he was able to call you on that and kind of bring you back.
Yeah, and the power of an aha in the moment is fantastic, but then when we repeat it the 12th time, it's like, let go of that aha and let's let a new aha come up. Because whatever it is today, it's going to look different tomorrow if we're open to the natural sort of organic way, right? Again, I am this way because when I was a kid, this happened and that happened. Can I let that go? Like that truth in the moment that I discovered it, and it opened this window of it isn't my fault and I get why I am the way I am, was so powerful and important. And if I'm still telling that story 20 years later, I'm screwed.
And you're affirming it by saying, I am the way I am.
Yeah.
Right? One of the things that I love to do because it reminds me that I'm in story or potentially in story is I'll start the sentence off. The story I tell myself is.
Yes.
And then whatever comes out, we were able to discuss kind of separate and apart from ourselves.
I love that.
To be able to look at it as, there's probably a story going on here that I really probably don't want any part of anymore.
Right. No, that's good. I mean, this is a big challenge because when we identify with, even if it's relief, again, the idea of healing feels really good. Well, then I have to keep creating hurts to heal. We're caught in it. We're caught in our own, shtick. It's become shtickized versus having it as a tool that we can utilize in moments where there's something to work on. But I don't want to create things to work on.
Right. You guys have been in relationship a lot longer than I have, I believe, and so I'm wondering, when you're going, do you notice so many different, rebirths in your relationship, so many new beginnings?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And often there's a
summer.
Yeah, like 15 minutes ago. I've been with Jasmine for 15 years, and Mitch, you're about the same, right?
Yeah,
15.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. There's so many bends and turns on the ride that we didn't expect. And again, the context is the critical piece, where the context is we're growing together. The context is it's an aspiration to have space in the relationship. It's an aspiration, right, to forgive fast. Do we do that all the time? No. Do we get scared and constrictive? Yes. Do we have these programmed beliefs about what it ought to look like? All the time, right? And layering kids in is the other crazy variable, right? When the kids get in, the show changes in ways that, who knew? This isn't my story about how I was going to be as a parent, and all my less than, gracious moments. And there are plenty.
Well, and the kids will be consistently my greatest teachers.
Totally.
Constantly.
Totally. And whatever relationship you had, before the kids, it's going to change. It doesn't, in some ways, the big challenge is maintaining a relationship separate from the kids. I mean, you and I both share that our in-laws, for me it's my parents, but for you it's your in-laws, can take the kids for a few days so you can have moments to remind yourself why you like each other, because the kids are so consuming, especially when they're little.
Well, and what ends up happening a lot of times with couples with kids is your relationship and your communication seems to be more about logistics.
Oh, big time.
Because
there's so many logistics.
There's so much going on that you're actually really just kind of coordinating with each other, schedules and so forth, and you're not really having the time or taking the time and creating the space to be able to connect.
Yeah.
And then when kids crawling in bed, that's a whole different story. It's nutty.
Yeah. I bow to you both and your wives for having children, having your relationship, and having a career. Because if we had kids in the mix, I'm like, how do parents do it? Like, really, how do you do it? So I think it's the most amazing job on the planet.
Well, again, there's a way to do it consciously, not in how you will behave, because that unfortunately, your worst will come out. At least in my experience, I think Mitch is nodding. So, look, you're going to see some dark days where I didn't know I had that in me. And again, if we go back to the context I'm holding it in, is growth, healing, consciousness, that I want to move back into, loving, even the parts of me that really feel unlovable, even the experiences that are really hard. I feel like with kids, picking up the pieces, my ability to, because they really don't care what you say. They're just reading energy, and they're pushing buttons because that's what they're sort of here to do. Like they're here to unwind you completely. And so it becomes how do I deal with it, and how am I growing, that they see modeled, that I think is the big gift to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The modeling piece. I mean,
not modeling in some idyllic way, because that's gone.
No.
The idea that of who I thought I'd be as a dad is out. That's not what's happening.
Well, I know that I'm modeling correctly when my kids turn to me and say, "Daddy, it's not okay for you to talk to me in that way."
I love when Isabella said to Antonio recently, "Is that the story you want to go with? Because you can make it up however you want." Is that the story? I was so great. I was like, "Yeah,
it's working."
Totally.
I'm not in it, but my kids at least have picked up on it.
That's crazy. Hey, Veronica, we've come to the end of this segment. Before we let you go, I want to give folks access, because I love your. Can I call it a show? It is a show, right? You do your.
The Treasure Tuesdays. Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to give people access to that, and of course access to your website and you as a resource for support and whatever they're up to, and to tune into the retreats and the workshops and the things that you do.
Cool.
So where are we sending people?
So on YouTube, you can go to my YouTube channel. On Tuesdays, I offer a show all about transforming the pain that we go through into, higher consciousness, and talking about some real raw stuff there. And it's called Treasure Tuesdays. Just go to YouTube, and it's Love, Love, Ronica 22. That's or you could just type in Veronica Krestow, Krestow.
And your website is also veronicakrestow.com, correct?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Hey, listen, thanks for coming and hanging with us. That was fun.
This was fun.
Thank you guys so much. I love this conversation, and it feels like the beginning of a much bigger conversation. It's an awesome topic.
I love it. We'll have to have you back.
Thank you. I would love it.
And for those of you listening, we invite you to come back after the break, because Mitch and I will be back to wrap things up here on Cutting Edge Consciousness. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness, thought-provoking discussions and bold ideas from the edge of possibility.
And welcome back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Freeman Michaels here with Mitch Newman.
Yes. Fun. Good
That's
stuff.
Awesome, man.
Yeah, good stuff.
The conversation about relationships is so rich and so layered, because I do think the idea that we can do our own work, but then to bring someone else in the mix, because we are relational, and to see because there's us, there's the other person, there's a space between us. And is the space between us, filled with dynamic where my stuff is matching their stuff? Or can we create a space between us where my aspirations, my vision can match with their vision, and even be explicit? I mean, as you know, I have a vision with my wife of 28 things that we're committed to creating as qualities of experience in our relationship. And maybe some muddling of both, right? So yes, sometimes we're in our vision and we're in our aspiration, and sometimes we're just in our dynamic, and that's that.
Yeah. I look at it as it's like there's the me that ultimately grows to an I, and then I have to take you into consideration. Yeah. And then the goal in relationship is now how do we take that and create a we?
Right.
So every time I'm in any kind of distress or upset, I've gone back to me. Like I've just jumped back to me, and it's really about how do I support my wife, or how do I encourage us to get back to that we piece where we're back to creating relationship on the terms that we want to create relationship.
And this distinction of a me in the we, right? So that I'm not so enmeshed. I have a sense of myself. I have other outlets. So I bring to the relationship something that is sort of independent,
right?
That feeds what we're co-creating.
And we have we're working on the we, and then we also have kids who are completely in me.
Yeah, they are.
They just live in me. I always say I'm only as good as my next yes, right? Because, we talked about Disneyland before. I remember taking the kids to Disneyland, and we got there at 8 o'clock, did the whole thing like you talked about. We're out of there by 2.
Yeah.
Just as the crowds were really coming in, and we're getting in the car, and we're driving out of the parking lot. And I hear from the back seat, what are we going to do now?
Yeah.
And I said, well, I think we're going to go home and just kind of relax and take it easy. And in a very soft but very distinct voice, I hear, this is the worst day ever.
I know. Isn't that crazy?
It's like, whoa.
The irony of that place is the happiest place on earth. And all day long you see kids having fits because they're not getting what they want.
That's right.
It's classic. But what's fascinating, and I'm not look, once a year we do Disneyland because it is fun and it's fine. And when the kids are in the woods or we do something like that, we went last summer to this ranch. I'll even plug it, Cottonwood Meadows. Oh my God, I love this place. It's in southern Utah. It's actually right outside of Bryce Canyon. And there was nothing to do. There's a lake, there's a dog, there's like goats and horses and chickens and stuff. But it's not set up like a dude ranch where you get to go ride these things. They're just around, right? And the guy who runs it's great. He lets the kids explore and there's all kinds of interesting things. And so we would sit out there on this porch. We rented this little cabin. He has like a dozen cabins, and we'd sit out there on the porch and just hang out, and the kids would run around. And we had come from Vegas to Zion National Park to this place, and we were meant to go back and spend 2 days in Vegas before we went back to Los Angeles. And our kids were saying, no, we want to come. We want to spend more time here. I mean, we couldn't get the extra night, but we were committed to let's spend more time here. But there was nothing to do. But there was so much to do. And the kids got along great, too. Yeah. And technology didn't work. So there was no...
Checking out.
Yeah. And, oh, my God, they loved it. So, there is something about unscheduled time in nature that's so gratifying, so fulfilling, without making Disneyland wrong. Without making... technology wrong, though technology is pretty wrong. It's crazy.
Did you notice that it took them a while to kind of just decompress?
Normally I'd say yes. For me, normally it does, but no. I mean, we got there and it was really exciting and interesting to them. It's an interesting place. I mean, I don't know. There was a lot to discover, and it was very organic. There was this old covered wagon that was run down that was on the property that had just been left there. There was this old house from the, 1800s or whatever that was falling apart, but they just left it there. And he was like, you can go explore it, but kind of be careful and whatever. And they were finding these old nails from 100 and some odd years ago, the old spike nails for building it. And it was so interesting. He was also interesting too. They'd go ask him about things and he'd talk about it. He was an older guy and he was just full of sweet wisdom, and I don't know, the whole experience was magical. It was magical.
Sounds brilliant.
Yeah. And again, it was less doing and more being, and he made us a fire at night if we wanted to come over to his, because he lives in the main house, to do s'mores, and he really enjoyed the kids and they really enjoyed him. And
see, I'm convinced I could have an equally good time at a place called the Hyatt. I don't know.
Right.
I'm not,
But this wasn't roughing it. We were we had a full cabin with heat and cool, and I mean, I don't know if there was cooling, but at night if it got cold, we could put the heat on, and there was stove and fridge and whatever, and it wasn't roughing it at all. It was really kind of wild. And then we'd go hiking Bryce Canyon, Red Rock Canyon, and come back and make these meals, and and time did just sort of drift away. We had, the sun went down, and a few hours later we were all sleeping, and I really wasn't looking at my watch, and we were just going with it. It was great.
Sweet.
Yeah. So I think it's a balance, and I think, for me as a parent, giving my kids the outlets and the experiences so they can, I don't want them to feel like they missed anything. So they've been to Disneyland, they've been to these places, but they also have this alternate experience, just like in the parenting where it's the, I don't want to get into teaching my kids to process, but I want to model enough tools that they begin to assimilate them.
Well, what I'm really hearing is, and it really resonates strongly for me, it's like you're wanting to give your kids, like I want to give my kids, experiences.
Yes.
Right? So they can see, they have an idea of how they live and zero clue about how other people live, except what they may glean from certain things they may watch on TV or what they learn in school. But to actually be in an environment that is not typical to what they're used to, and to see how they adapt and how they learn and how they grow and be inquisitive.
I love how Susan has, I mean, it's a little crazy. She uprooted and she now lives in Mexico, and she's got this crazy ride she's taking her whole family on, and the kids are having this experience.
She lost me on Facebook with the pictures of the scorpions in the pool.
Oh my God. And then she came out one day, there was like this 6 foot or whatever lizard, I mean, iguana, whatever, I don't know what it is, on her. Like the first day she was there, she came out in the morning and that was on her lawn. She's like, oh my God, what am I doing here?
Yeah, I lost that adventure gene somewhere along the way.
We're going down to visit. I'm excited. But I love the idea that, again, in their relationship vision, this is Susan and Jared, they have adventure, that they go on adventures as a family. And there's a lot of discomfort. She said, oh my God, there's so much discomfort moving down here. Like, it's really different. And her first month was really bumpy. Yeah. But she held it in this bigger context, which could handle that. And then, you know, those bumpy parts become part of the magic of the journey. They actually become maybe the most important part. You know, that you maybe heard this quote from Daryl Anka, choose to presume the challenges are good. Because that's where we grow and learn, and that's where the magic happens. And so instead of being resistant, can we kind of embrace them as they come up and go, where's the opportunity in this?
Yeah. Well, and it's just an experience. It's not a permanence to it. There's not like, this is it. You have to get used to it. It's the whole aspect of adventure is gearing up towards creating deeper adventures and more adventures. Yeah. So that's the whole point of it.
Well, and even an adventure can be negative and still have value. Right. Like, okay, that was a bumpy ride, you know, and some of these experiences in my life that were really difficult ultimately paid massive dividends. I'm not saying to try to have more of those. You know, it stinks to, you know, go through a divorce or lose all your money or have someone really close to you die. But every one of those experiences totally brought me into a deeper sense of who I am and what's important and so forth. So, you know, it's a crazy mixed bag.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
Yeah. So tell me what's up for you. I know you've got the relationship coach stuff going. You got lots of folks coming through. You're able to support couples. Tell us a bit more.
Well, I'm actually, it's really couples and companies now. I'm actually moving into working with companies.
Yes.
As you know, it's the same tools.
Yes.
And to be able to have kind of a bigger, wider impact than going, one couple at a time or one individual at a time. So I've been having a lot of fun with that and doing the podcast, getting back into doing more of those. I've been also writing a column for positivelypositive.com.
Yes, I love those articles.
Yeah, I've been having fun with bringing, my stuff, family, kids, relationship, kind of bringing it all together and doing some stuff with them and just keep expanding that, just to keep expanding the opportunity for spread the message.
I love the stuff you put up on Facebook. I kind of want to nudge people towards just following you on Facebook because there's so much cool, interesting things.
That's a whole nother, my last posting about the conversations around sex.
Yeah.
Living in a house full of women and dad freezes up.
Yeah. No, that was great.
Yeah, it's crazy. So my
very self-revealing and honest.
I'm outnumbered and loving it. So
that's
a lot
right.
of material.
That's right.
Good stuff.
And thanks, Mitch, for showing up.
Thanks
sitting in for
me.
Barnet. You're going to have to give us his slippers back.
Which ones? The bunny ones or the giraffe ones? Okay.
Yeah, right. And for those of you listening, we are so grateful that you keep coming back every week. We next week are going to have Sandy calling in. She's with Barnet up in Toronto because we want an update on what's going on up there. And so she's going to come in by phone. And of course, we'll have another guest. So we invite you to come back again next week and keep coming back to Cutting Edge Consciousness. Thanks for listening.